Hi 7th graders, welcome to your very first video lesson. This will be lesson 1.1 and today we are going to learn how to find the absolute value of an integer. And before we get started, what you're going to need to make sure you have with you is your notebook and a pencil. Please be sure as you go through each slide you take notes. If you need to, here is an example of what integers are. -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3. Now do you notice there's dot, 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 and over here at the negatives it continues dot, dot, dot. Do you guys know what that means? Hopefully you're saying yes, and that means that the series of numbers continues forever and ever. We're just showing you a small portion. What does that mean? Well, it means that the next number would be 4, and then 5, and then 6. And if we continued on the negative side, from -3, we're going to get even smaller and go to -4, even smaller, -5, and so on. Okay? So make sure you have your notebooks ready, and what we're going to do is write a definition for integers. Definition of integers is all the whole numbers and their opposites. What does that mean? Well, if I take a look at 0, 1, 2, and 3, these numbers are called whole numbers because they're whole. There's no decimal, there's no fraction attached to them, it's just the number. We can't call negatives whole numbers because whole numbers can't be negative. Correct, whole numbers can't be negative. So if we take a look, 0's opposite is 0. What's the opposite of 1? -1. What's the opposite of 2? -2. What's the opposite of 3? -3. So if you notice, every single positive whole number has an opposite called an integer. Okay? So half of the integer family is made up of whole numbers. The negative side is the part that's called integers, but we can call whole numbers whole numbers. We could also call the positive side integers. So the definition for integer is all the whole numbers and their opposites. Okay, absolute value. This is a skill we'll be using a lot throughout the year. If you take a look at this number line, we have two numbers highlighted, -4 and 4. So let's pretend you are standing at -4, number we put in there. So take a look at the bottom of the page here. Here are the bars. It's result. Okay. Find the absolute value of -2. So first, what's the distance from 2 to 0? How far is the number to 0? So I hope you're saying 2 units. So the absolute value, again, here are the bars. That's your question. What is the absolute value of 2? Your answer is +2. What is the absolute value of -3? Draw yourself a little number line. You don't have to go down to negative. You don't have to make it this big. Just make sure -3 is part of your number line. So let's find the distance between -3 and 0. So from -3, we are 1, 2, 3 units away. Okay, so the distance from this unit to 0 is 3 units away. So what is the absolute value of -3? Again, here are the bars. This is your question. Just as it's written here in words, this is what it looks like symbolically, okay, in mathematics. The bars represent this question right here. Okay, so the distance or the absolute value of -3 is 3. Here we go. For this component, we're going to compare values. We're going to compare a positive 1 to the absolute value of negative 4. Remember what I told you before, that this is a question. So what we need to do before we even start comparing is put these two values on the number line. Okay, so 1, it's just an integer, so we're able to place that right on the number line, right there. All right, the absolute value of negative 4, that's a question. What is the absolute value of negative 4? And I hope all of you have just learned that it is 4. So we're going to go on the number line and notice on 4, we put the absolute value of negative 4 right over it because its distance, its value is worth 4. Okay? So the absolute value of negative 4, the solution to that is 4. So we're graphing its final answer. Now that we know where these two numbers are worth on the number line, we're able to compare the two numbers. Which one is larger, positive 1 or positive 4? Which one is greater? Okay, so 4 is bigger than 1, so that means 1 is less than 4. So we put the less than sign in here. Okay, notice that when we compare the two numbers, we're using the two original forms that were given to us. We're not writing 1 is less than 4. We weren't given 4 as an original number. We were given the absolute value of negative 4. So